Hello and welcome everyone to this new podcast about the leadership and how we can become influential, impactful, and successful leader. I'm Wajid Ali. I'm talking live from Toronto, and with me is my co-host, my partner, and expert on leadership, Rob Cameronpour. So I'll bring him all also onto the studio. He can give his introduction, and then we can start about the topic that we are going to discuss on today. The topic for today is really exciting, really interesting, and it is about we'll discuss some of the workplace challenges, dealing with difficult situation with difficult people. What are some of the recommendation? What is it that we have learned all across these years? So we're gonna share those insight with you in a couple of moments, and we'll talk about it. Hey, Rob, you're up, so you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Rob Cameronpour, and I'm the founder of RK Leadership. And I want to thank Wajid for having me on here. I'm looking forward to chatting with everyone and hopefully answering any questions that come up. And we're here to help you guys out. So I hope you enjoy this episode.
Awesome, man. Thank you, Rob. Thank you for joining today. I know it's a weekend, and I appreciate your time talking to us and sharing your insights. So, as we were planning for this session, we thought it would be important to
No problem.
touch upon some of the issues that could be, which is associated kind of on day-to-day life for a leadership or for even for a team member. And what I've heard and what I've seen in throughout my career, that there are some difficult situations that you come across. The situation could be linked to the workplace situation itself, could be related to the business, it could be related to a person, or it could be related to some of the projects that you're working on. So this is the theme of the podcast today. This is what we're gonna address. I have a question for you, Rob. So, I was talking to someone, and
Yeah.
he brought this idea, or call it this feedback or comment about, in working with cross-functional groups. So if you're working with cross-functional groups within an organization, you come across dealing with multiple functions that could be finance, engineering, technology people, field people, people that work in the operations, and variety of other functions, right? And as a leader, you might not
Yeah.
be, or you may not be an expert on all these functions, right? So I'll take a pause here, and let's take a little bit of deep dive on what is it that we would recommend based on what we have seen in the industry. So if you're working in a leadership role and you're kind of managing or coordinating across multifunctional teams, what are
Yeah.
some of the recommendations?
Yeah, this is an interesting topic and it's something I'm sure that a lot of people can relate to, in especially in bigger or larger organizations, which I've had the privilege to be in. I'm sure you have as well. Uh, the main problem that I've seen over the years is the creation of silos, and silos happen when people don't communicate. So the root cause of all this is communication. Communication is the biggest piece of misunderstandings, um, people not being informed, transparency, people not knowing what's going on in the other lines of businesses. So again, as a leader, it's so important to have that cross pollination between uh, your colleagues at the same level, and that communication at that level to say, hey, you know what, once in a while we have to get the teams together, or we have to understand what each group is doing, right? And bringing people in from those different groups to educating and updating people and sharing the knowledge and information and the lessons of what's going on. And especially because everything is integrated together. So when you're talking about running a with finance, you're dealing with legal, you're dealing with the field, everybody, like, it's an integral part. That's why a company is, you're one company, because you're all working together. And a big piece of that is not communicating, not collaborating together where you should be. So it's that's my take on that from a very high level.
Yeah, no, that's you touched upon some of the key points there. And I think, as you mentioned, the communication is a big piece, and you kind of highlighted on some of the challenges as well, mainly on the silos approach within larger organization, right? So now, as a leader, if I'm working in a position where I have to coordinate with multifunctional groups, to your point, keeping the communication open, being transparent in the communication, and making sure that everybody, as you said, it's a team. So making sure that everybody that is on that team is considered valuable and is considered as in a way that that person feel a sense of belonging, right? So that he or she doesn't feel being kind of isolated. But I have a
Correct.
sort of I'll just bounce it back onto you. So if you do all these things, you make sure that you communicate properly, you make sure that you're transparent, you make sure that you keep everybody in the loop as much as it's needed. But if you do all these things and you still feel like there are some people that they still feel unheard, or maybe they feel a sense of not belonging to the team, then in that
Yeah.
situation, what is it that you could do further to make sure that, if there's a person or two persons or whatnot, could be that relationship could be further improved? You know what I mean? Like you did everything, but there are some people that are still having some issues.
Yeah. Again, and you mentioned saying you did everything. So you did
Yeah,
everything, meaning to what you think is right.
that's
I think
right.
the important piece of that, Wajid, is actually listening to people. Right?
Right.
Have you had an opportunity to listen to people and get their input in terms of why they're not buying in, why they feel unheard?
Right.
So it's important to have that communication, again, not across only, but down, up. So at every vertical, you're communicating, and it doesn't matter what level it is. You have to understand. You have to understand your people. You have to get to know, like we talked about before, their strengths, their weaknesses, and somebody could be an introvert and they're not going to be very vocal in meetings. So your opportunity is, maybe if they're not talking in meetings, is to ask them some questions, right? Ask them questions that will, like, they won't feel uncomfortable answering them. So you don't put them on
Right.
the spot,
Right.
but you kind of ask everybody, you have like a round table asking the same, and just including them in the project, meaning ask their input, right? what
Fair
what can we
enough.
do
Yeah.
differently? What can we add on? What are the issues? So those are some of the things, I would do. And again, with your experience, what are some of the things that you've come across, and how did you see things being handled?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, as you just said, if you feel like you did everything right, if you feel like you did the right thing, I think that approach that you just highlighted, where you need to make sure that you're listening to the person, and you're not just kind of making a judgment just in your head,
Yeah.
right? So it's really important, as you said, to make sure that maybe that person is introvert, he's not open, he or she's not open to talk to in a group setting. So it's better to have that one-on-one communication. I think, so if you're asking me, in my career, I have seen different situations. Some people are very direct, so you can be have that direct channel of communication. And some people are, then you need to kind of use different strategies or different approaches to make sure that that person is being heard, being valued. To your point, it is important to have one-on-one sitting with those people. And at the same time, if you feel like you did one-on-one, you did group settings, you did again, I'm just kind of alluding back to, you did everything that even after listening, and you heard the person and you did the listening sessions, and again, I'm kind of going to that situation where, as a leader, I mean, yes, you can do whatever is in your capacity. Yeah. But what I'm trying to say here is that if you feel like after doing everything, there are still challenges, the best thing is to connect that person to another mentor, right? So find another mentor, maybe another coach, a trainer, internally or externally, and invest into that employee, because again, that employees are assets, right? So if you feel like there are challenges, the best way is to find a solution internally, maybe by direct communication. But if it's not working, then connect that person to an external coach, mentor, maybe a trainer, have some kind of, call it therapy sessions, right? For lack of better term. And that'll gonna help in team building. So I think that's another way of looking at it. What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, those are some great points. I think, again, as a leader, it's your job to understand what are the gaps within each person in the group. What do they need? And when you have these one-on-ones, or when you're observing your team and understanding, what they're good at and what they're not good at, is to provide them with the training. Just like you said, there's everybody's got gaps. Everybody, including the leaders, have gaps in certain aspects of their job. It's for you to determine what are those gaps and address those gaps, like you said, and whatever it takes. Do you have to invest in training for them? Do you have to invest in coaching? You should be coaching your team, but I understand that you might not have the capacity to coach a lot of people. This is where you set people up with with other folks in the organization or your team to mentor them, or you can get external coaching for them. There's so many options that we can utilize. The piece that's missing is taking action. Right? It's everything you can come up with, and you'll know what the issues are, but we seldom take that action, the next step to making those improvements. And we're easy to finger point at everybody and get upset and get emotional and get frustrated with the lack of. But again, you are to address that lack of as a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess on that note, right? So, as a leader, or I think there could be a word that could be used. So as a leader, you're not just a leader, but you're a mentor too. You are a coach too, for your team, right? So, the best way is how to approach it. The first thing is, I guess, if we have to kind of bullet it out, the first thing would be to stay calm. Make sure that you're calm in tough situations, right? Make sure that you can take on the pressure. Maybe you need some trainings for yourself.
Yes.
Maybe you need to grow. Maybe you need to invest in yourself to understand how to handle different situations, right? So it's not always that your team needs training. Yes, of course they do. But at the same time, you as a leader have to invest in yourself. You as a leader have or has to grow and make sure that you're taking the right steps for yourself too. Because if you're too much overwhelmed and I guess call it blindsided about yourself, and you're just looking into the other direction, then I guess you're not doing the right thing. It's sort of both ways. You need to invest in your team, but you have to invest in yourself too. And what I've seen in the organizations, people, it's either A or B. either there is a lot of investment into the leadership, but there's no investment into the team, or there is a lot of investment into the team, but there's no investment into the leaderships. So we have to kind of find the right balance, right, when it comes to mentorship, trainings, coaching. And since you're doing it, Rob, what are your thoughts? What you have seen in the industry?
Boy, I see a huge gap. That's what I see. I see a lot of good people. I see a lot of capable and competent people, but unfortunately, they're lacking that training. They're lacking that coaching. They're lacking that mentorship. Again, I'll say it over and over again. The root cause of that is, look at your own boss today. Look at your own leader. Look at your manager.
Right.
Look at their calendar. And I would challenge everybody out there to ask them, how much time do you spend with your direct reports coaching them? How much time do you spend developing your team? How much time do you spend on development plans with your team? You're always constantly fighting fires. Let's say you got that 9-to-5 schedule.
Right.
A lot of people don't even have time to eat, for God's sakes. And that's not a good thing, right? Because
absolutely,
when you don't take care of yourself from a health perspective, and I always say this, people, all they do is like they drink a lot of coffee at work, but they don't. Yeah. If you're eating, you're rushing to eat where you're not even enjoying your food. So if you're not healthy, guess what? Your mind's all messed up, and it impacts your mood. It impacts your emotions. It impacts your thoughts. It impacts your physiology, everything. So we can dig very deep into this, but I think the investment in both, like you said, in both the leaders and the teams, there needs to be a better structure to it. There needs to be a proper structure, and I see a lot of nice policies in place. Oh, we have this training for you. So to me, training 1 or 2 days is garbage. You go and get training. How much of that do you really retain? People's attention spans have become so short.
Right.
You think 2 days of 8-hour training is gonna sink in, and they're gonna hone in on it, and they can take off with it? No. So you provide the training, but you have to upkeep that training, and you have to. It's that control loop system that you learn feedback. Learn something, feedback. I'm using the engineering terms, but
sure.
That's what you have to do with people as well, is what you're teaching them. You have to ensure that it sustains with them, and you follow up with it. And I think that's why coaching is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're saying here is, and just to make it sort of to break it down and make it kind of simple for the audience, because our audience and the people listening to us, they're potential leaders for the future, right? So all this information, and of course they're current leaders as well. So all this information that we are sharing here is to ensure that what we have seen in the industry, we provide these experiences, share it with them as an insight, and kind of make it easier for them in some of the situation they may be facing currently or in the future, right?
That's right.
So just to make simple, what you said is to have not just a day or 2 days training in the entire year, or maybe in the entire 2 to 3 years, but to have sort of a cadence of trainings where you get a training maybe for 6 to 8 hours the first month, but then there's a follow-up session within. It depends. You can make that schedule whatever works for each individual. It could be every quarter. It could be once or twice every year, but it needs to be a repeated cycle. You can't just train yourself or your team member for a day or 2, and then you expect that, as you said, Rob, then you expect that everything will take off. So it should be a repeated pattern in there, and if there isn't, then then I think that's what you are, I guess, highlighting, that there is no repeated pattern. People do invest into trainings at times, but in your thought process and what you have seen, it's not effective and it's not actually meaningful. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like that's the gap I was able to identify throughout all these years. And one thing I'm doing about it is, I'm actually working with somebody to come up with a solution for organizations in terms of training. And what this pertains is the same exact thing that what I said is, look, we know that we're going to empower your teams to do this now. So we're gonna create this platform for you where you'll have the 2 days of training, or however many days of training it is, but you get to sustain what you learn throughout the year. So we're going to enable and empower your teams and stay on top of that throughout the year. So it actually sticks with them. So Wajid, again,
Right.
throughout your career,
Yeah.
you took some technical training, some courses that your organization provided for you, or some leadership training,
Right.
courses. How much of that were you able to retain in the 1 or 2 days? Because I can tell you how much I was able to retain. I want to hear that from you and
Yeah.
your experience.
That's a tricky question. I don't want to answer it live here because everybody's watching.
No, you gotta listen. You gotta be honest, because
Yeah.
we're doing this to help people. We're not calling
Absolutely.
people
No,
out. This
that's
is
right.
to help the
No,
organization,
absolutely. Yeah.
the leaders, everybody, right? So I
No,
want you
that's
to be
fair.
honest. Like
Yeah.
this is you speaking.
And that's why we're doing it, right? So
Yeah.
it's to be fair, it's hard to retain. Maybe for the first few days, or maybe for a couple of weeks, you may retain some of the information,
Yes.
but then everything goes away and you go back to your normal routine, right? On your
Yes.
day-to-day, right? So I totally agree with what you just said. It should be like a repeated pattern. There should be follow-up sessions. There needs to be some kind of cadence where you go back and you reflect upon, what did you learn the first week? How much did you apply? What is the outcome? What are you able to apply? We're not able to apply. What are the challenges that you're not able to apply if you're not able
Yeah.
to? And if you were able to apply, what were the outcomes? Did you see any improvement? Did you see any regression or progression? Like, all those things needs to be looked at. And unfortunately, it's not happening. It's not happening in these organizations.
Yeah.
So this is my fair, honest response.
And that's great. So I want to add something to that, right?
Sure.
Again, I'm not here calling out organizations or leaders or anybody, because now I'm going to flip the script to the people taking the training. So now it's on the employees, new leaders, whoever that's going through the training. It's also up to you to take that initiative and upkeep what you learn. So if you see that you're not, that you need more of that training, or you need more help, or there's a specific area, you also need to come up with a plan and present that to your leader. So don't always wait for somebody to come and hold your hand. You take that initiative, because if you want to be a leader, you got to start taking initiatives. And in order to do so, figure out, what do you need help with? And if you know something within yourself, and that's where like the self-reflection and the self-awareness are important, you put a plan together and say, hey, this is what I came up with. This is my roadmap. How can you help me get to my goal? And you've done some of the work. You've done most of the lifting already. So now your leader can actually look at that, have their input. And again, I always say, have action items, milestones, and responsibilities and accountabilities. So once you have that, you execute it, and you have to execute it. Take action, and you have to have regular follow-up sessions. Even when you're creating development plans at work, you have to follow up regularly. You can't leave it for the end of the year to kind of get that feedback, or else you're back to square one.
True, absolutely. Well, 100% I agree with what you just said. Is not always, don't leave everything to the leadership or to the organization. to treat you, or to treat you in a way that you will be leader one day. It's your job as an individual to take initiative at your personal level and bring it to the table of your leaders or your organization. Give them sort of a, maybe do your homework, as Rob said, and bring all those details that you prepare. And then if you feel like there are gaps that you need to fill in, ask for help and make sure that those things are addressed. So just keep pushing your leaders, keep pushing your organizations, because at the end of the day, if you're trained, if you are capable, if your skills are polished, right, it's a benefit to you, but it's a benefit to the organization that you're working for. So it's sort of a win-win for both the team member, the leader, and for the organization, right? So
Yeah.
it's not that you're just making an expense. It's actually an investment into yourself and into the organization.
I also want to bring something else up with respect to this point. And, I'm sure a lot of people ask this question, or, they have this concern where I'm getting the training, I'm learning, new leadership skills, but I don't have the opportunity to apply those skills in the training at work. So what would you do? So I'll ask you that question. If you came across that for yourself, Wajid, what would you do?
Well, again, to our previous comment that we made, I guess if you get a training and you're not able to apply it because of whatever role you're in that organization or situation you're in, then there are two ways of looking at it. A, you go back to your leader, talk to them that, hey, I got this training, but it seems like in my current role, there's no capacity or there's no bandwidth to apply this to have like sort of an application of that training. Or B, take an initiative, expand your role without waiting for your leader to come in and hold your hand and kind of walk you through. Just sort of expand yourself within where you are and try ways to apply those things. So I guess there are multiple ways of doing it, but these are the couple of things that comes into my mind. What are your thoughts, Ralph? Because you were asking the question.
Yeah, so again, I would challenge everybody on this and say it's up to you to take that initiative. So
Right.
What I would challenge everybody out there is, when you ask this question, which a lot of people do ask, and you come across this situation, my challenge to you is go out in your communities and apply these skills that you're learning in the communities, because again,
Right.
you don't need that title to lead. So there's
Right.
a lot of opportunities in there's a lot of volunteering opportunities that are not necessarily paid, or it's like non-profit organizations. You can find a way to apply those opportunities and learn even more outside of your workspace. So don't just wait until somebody comes and hands you a title and said, okay, now today you're a leader.
Right.
Apply it right away. You don't need to wait.
Absolutely. That's a great, an excellent suggestion and recommendation. And I think most of the people, it's sort of thinking out of the box, right? So
Yes.
how do you think out of the box? To your point, if you learned something, but now you feel like you're kind of not able to apply, then there are other ways to look into. And having volunteering into your community and to your wherever you are, to enhance and apply those skills, I guess that's an excellent recommendation. Now I know we are just kind of running into the last couple of minutes, but I have and maybe we'll take this one as a separate topic for next podcast, but on a very high level, just as a touch point. If you were, how can a leader, let me rephrase it, how can a person develop a resilience as a person, as a personality, or as a skill, right? Because I think it's a separate podcast we're gonna do into, but on a high level, what is that if you want to touch upon this one?
Be okay with failing.
Mhm.
Learn
Be
from
okay
the
with failing.
fail. take risks.
So be ready for, be ready, take risk, be ready for the failure, and don't stop. If you fail, keep trying.
Keep moving forward.
Keep moving forward. That's a good one. Thank you, Rob, again for your time this weekend. I truly appreciate it. I'm sure that it was a useful and engaging conversation for our audience. Feel free to leave your comments and your feedback. What is it that you want to learn? What is it that you want to hear in upcoming podcasts from me or from Rob? And keep following RK Leadership and keep following this podcast as well. We'll meet again next week. Thank you again, and take care.
Awesome.